Well, first of all, happy Mother's Day. And I want to dispel a rumor that's been floating around. Actually, I did have a mother. So I want you people to stop spreading that malicious lie about me. But it's a great thing, motherhood. Without motherhood, we wouldn't have children. So I'll explain that later to those of you who aren't that bright. So enough of that. I always like to touch base with these holidays. I think they're important. But today I want to talk about, unfortunately, my friend Bill Maher, whom I really like generally, but lately he's been on this anti-Gaza role and this support of Israel, constantly supporting Israel and everything Israel's doing. And every time somebody complains about what Israel's doing to the people of Gaza, which you've heard me talk about, that is horrific, and will make Israel go down in history as one of the worst countries that ever existed. And Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. And hopefully he's someday going to be brought before a tribunal and he's going to be executed for starving children. So Bill Maher better stop this if he wants to maintain my friendship, which is very important to him. So, but he started doing this thing, and I'm thinking, my God, there's a commercial on TV, and it's about, I think it's State Farm, and it's talking about how he's some guy trying to teach people how to not become their parents. And it's clever. It's not wildly funny, but it's clever. And he shows them doing things like, at the filling station, making ridiculous conversations with complete strangers who have obviously no interest in hearing him. And he's kind of the voiceover is they can't stand a silence or a void in the conversation, or when there's people around, they've got to fill it. They have to say things. And I was thinking, when I listened to Bill Maher, and he was talking Friday, criticizing parents for getting ideas from their stupid kids who are saying that what Israel is doing is outrageous to the Palestinians. And Bill's saying, this is ridiculous. These people had better stop listening to their stupid kids with their ideas that it's a bad thing to starve civilian children. It's a bad thing for Israel to even exist in the first place. Does that make me one of those kids? I don't have kids. I didn't get that information from my kids. I got that information by living through history, by studying history. I have no dog in that hunt, no horse in that race, whatever. I've come by my views of Israel as a rogue nation that should never have come into existence by studying the facts, and that's how I reach all my conclusions. He apparently is not, because he's half Jewish, and you can just say, I'm a Jew, so I got to support everything Israel does. Israel's right. And boy, those people, the people of Hamas, started this war in October when the people of Hamas invaded Israel. It was a gang of thugs who attacked people who had mainly been going to a concert and killed them and treated them horribly, tortured them, raped. They did terrible things. But it was a gang. It was a small group of people. It wasn't the people of Palestine. And the people of Palestine are not Hamas. But he always talks about them as though they're Hamas and the people. And so he was talking about these demonstrators and how this younger generation, they've given up the flag. They've got to regain patriotism. And always he swings that back around to that they need to be supporting Israel. And he showed one sign, and it said, because he keeps saying it's Hamas. These people are supporting Hamas. The people demonstrated in Columbia and Harvard and Michigan, they're all supporters of Hamas. Well, if you take that, then I'm a supporter of Hamas, which I'll correct to say I'm not. They're not supporters of Hamas because they're opponents of Israel. It doesn't make them supporters of Hamas, but he treats it that way. And one of the things he showed was a big sign after first of all saying that he appreciates the fact that the politicians are now starting to swear, because it shows that they feel strongly about things. And then in the course of, and he switched from there to talking about how terrible it is that young people have given up on the American flag because they support Gaza and are condemnatory of Israel. So one of the things he shows a big sign after going on and on about Hamas, and here's his example, and it was this big sign that said, "Fuck Israel, support Gaza. Not a word there about Hamas. But because it said fuck Israel, support Gaza. That was a perfect example of how the young people, and I don't know the young people that put that up, it doesn't matter what their age was, that's a perfect example of anti-Americanism. Because he's equating America with Israel in his battle against Hamas or any other Arab, or the Gaza or any other group of Arabs. It's always Israel is kind of the alter ego of the United States. And so I know where it's coming from, and it's coming from exactly the wrong place, and I see that from a lot of my Jewish friends who think that Israel is their football team, and you got to support it no matter what. Fortunately, more and more Jews, particularly younger ones, are not looking at the world that way, and that's a great thing. But the ones that do, that always comes back to, I got to support Israel because Israel has a right to exist. Well, first of all, Israel has no right to exist, no moral right to exist, and had no legal right to exist until 1948. And then it only had so because the United Nations says so, and who says the United Nations makes that decision? And then, of course, started an immediate war between Israel and its Arab neighbors, which has been going on ever since. It was actually going on before, but before that it was primarily Israel against the English, because that was called, the British... British Mandate Palestine. So then it became Israel because the United Nations said so. And then they had that war, and that war has been going on ever since. So you've heard me say this, I don't want to belate this, but people who are knowledgeable, as I am, because I've lived through this stuff, long before Israel was a country, that Israel had no right to go in there to escape, to have a place where it could have an identity and feel secure against the rest of the world because of what the Nazis, Germany, did to the Israelis. The Arabs didn't do that, the Germans did it. And they had no right to go in there and tell these people, okay, thousands of years ago there was some stuff in the Bible that said that David was the king of Israel, and he took Jerusalem, stole that, just like they stole the rest of the land of Palestine from the Arabs who were living there, and said that because of that, that means that that's the proper place for Israel to have a country, and screw the people that live there. Well, now we see the ultimate result of that with what the Israelis are doing to the people in Gaza, which is basically genocide. So I really can't believe it. I'm so disappointed in Bill Maher for going there. You think as somebody who is generally supported, and he's a moderate, so am I in most things, but that he supports the notion generally of being fair and being kind and trying to help people who are help the needy, help the people who need it, and that's kind of the role that the Democratic Party has tried to fulfill, and the Republicans have turned their back as often as they can, particularly under Trump. And Bill's been right there on the right side, and then it comes to Israel, and suddenly all of his values are upside down and inverted. So, but it reminded me, because I started talking about this State Farm commercial, and when these people, the older people can't believe, he couldn't believe that the middle-aged people were turning into their parents. And to me, what is that so reminiscent? It's Vietnam. I was one of those who was in college and law school during the height of the Vietnam War. A young lawyer then later on when Nixon was still running that damn thing. And it's like we were vehemently opposed to that war, basically on moral grounds, not because we didn't want to be drafted, but on moral grounds. And I came to that from a different background than most people because my father was involved in the Geneva Accord negotiations. He knew all about the details of Vietnam. He taught them to me from the time I was a little kid. He was vehemently opposed to that war, going back to when Eisenhower was president. So I came to it from a better educated's point of view, but I really felt good to see that my fellow students and fellow people my age were really leading demonstrations, although I thought often they were counterproductive, but nonetheless speaking out strongly against what we were doing in Vietnam on moral grounds. And who was criticizing them all the time, saying they were pro-communist, they were weak sisters, they were this, that, and the other, they weren't patriotic? The people who are the same age, their parents who are the same age that Bill Maher is today. He should be in that Geico commercial. He's turned into his parents. Not my parents, fortunately, but the parents who were out there calling everybody who was all of us young people who didn't know what we were talking about because we were supporting the communists. No, we weren't supporting the communists any more than these young people were supporting Hamas. We were against what we were doing. Today they're against what we are doing in supporting Israel and giving Israel billions of dollars worth of weapon systems to turn against innocent people. Yeah, they say, well, we need to defend ourselves. You don't need to defend yourself if you're not there. Get out! And what people in this country should be saying to our government is, stop sending any money at all to Israel and tell the Jews to get out of Palestine. Leave. We will send ships over there and load you on there. You don't belong there. It's not your land. They're going to be gone eventually anyway. At some point in time, the young people are going to be middle-aged and older people in this country. They're going to control the purse strings, and they're going to say no more money for Israel. And you know what's going to happen to Israel then? It's going to collapse. Because without American financial aid and American military aid, there is no Israel. It exists only because that we do. And who sees that and who knows that? Everybody in the world but us. You think it's a coincidence that every time there's a vote in the United Nations, which constantly come up these resolutions condemning Israel in the United Nations over and over and over again? And they all fail because of one vote against them, and that's the United States. We vote against the rest of the world where Israel is concerned over and over and over, and there's only one reason for that, and that's the billions of dollars that the Israeli government takes our money and turns it back in and uses it to finance the campaigns of politicians, Republicans and Democrats, equally to the terms of tens of millions, of hundreds of millions of dollars. That's the only reason that we don't join when these resolutions condemning Israel. Now, we should do, and eventually it's going to happen. We need to save the lives of the Jews who are over there, the civilians, good people, a lot of them Americans, going over there for exactly the wrong reason, which is a religion. And this notion of from the river to the sea saying, oh, that's the Palestinians, when they say it's terrible, but when the Jews say it, it's fine. Because that's clearly the Netanyahu policy. That's morally wrong, and it won't stand up forever because the rest of the world is eventually going to win this thing. And to me, that's one of the biggest things I have against this damn Trump, is he's all in for Israel. All in for Israel is Trump, and you should be disgusted with him for that reason alone. I'm sorry to sound strong, but this is so reminiscent to me of Vietnam. And it's just like, we got to stop these Jews in Israel and get them the hell out of that part of the world, send our ships over, bring them back to the United States. Many of them came from here in the first place, or send them back to where their families are from in Europe. But get them out of there. They're nothing but trouble. People have been dying by the tens of thousands and thousands and suffering horribly. And I'm talking about the legitimate people living there, which were the Palestinians. The Jews don't have any legitimate right to have a country right in the middle of other people's lands and territories. So I'm sorry to get upset, but when I see gross treatment by military powers against civilian populations, which is what's been going on over there forever, I mean ever since the Jews decided that they had a homeland there and they could do whatever they wanted to keep it, it infuriates me, and it should infuriate you as well. So, you know, a lot of people don't like it when I get mad. I don't care. I get mad because I get mad. And when I get mad about things like that, I speak out, and I hope to hell that if any of you are watching this thing, you will be motivated to contact your Congress people, because they actually do listen, and it's the only thing to which they're going to pay any attention. Trump's got to be stopped right now because of what he's doing with Israel and what he's doing to those Gaza people. It's horrific. And not that Biden was much better, but at least you didn't get the kind of rhetoric coming out of the White House with Biden that you do with Trump. And Bill Maher, come on, you know. Then he goes, he has dinner with Trump. He says, well, you know, I saw the real Trump because he was, you know, he was gracious. No, you didn't see the real Trump. You saw the manipulative Trump. Trump's an actor. The real Trump is the Trump that all of us see on TV when he wants to make a point and get our votes. I don't think there is any real base to him. I mean, I don't mean the base. He has a base. I'm talking about any real internal fiber. I don't think he stands for anything. And so anything he says because he sees a practical value in it for him. So I just, you know, I'm becoming less, you know, I've always been willing to give Trump a chance. And I still am willing. I mean, he could change some of the policy things he's doing, and I would support him. but the more I see of him, the more I'm just disgusted. And now I've got Bill Maher over here, who I'm always admired, always like, and he was doing fine with this. Was on his new rules, fine until he took this thing about this senator from Michigan, anyway, wherever she's from, had said about the Americans have become a bunch of wussies and they're all in favor of affirmative action. I'm saying, yeah, you're right. And then she says, and we've got to take back the flag. And I'm saying, yeah, you got to stop letting the Republicans pretend like they're the patriotic ones and we're not. And then Bill Maher was like saying these things, and I'm saying, yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden he turns it into taking the flag, is giving up the flag means it's criticizing Israel. And how he switched from that to that, I have no idea. But all of a sudden I'm like, what? That's what I said exactly. What? Huh? What? Yeah, or variations on that thing. But it's like, come on, man. You know, let's go back to Vietnam and let's start asserting our moral authority. And let's tell Israel to stop it. And the only way that thing can only be resolved, and I don't know how it can be resolved otherwise, is just start getting those people out of there. You know, instead of constantly increase the number of Jews in there so they can push more and more people out. It's a tiny little area of land. It's a postage stamp. Yet look, it's a source of so much conflict. Let's start listening to the rest of the world, and let's say no to contributions from AIPAC. No more contributions from AIPAC. I want people to stand. I want Democrats to stand and say, we're not taking contributions from AIPAC. And eventually, let's send in our aircraft carriers. And start loading those people off and shipping them someplace else, because they all came from someplace else, either they or their ancestors, or their families, not ancestors, families. I mean, this really started, in reality, in the 1940s. After I was born. It was like in '48, and it's like which is right close to 1950. And so it's not like they've been there for generations. You know, some of them were there thousands of years ago, but they haven't lived there for generations. And so they can go back. Yeah, let's get them out of there. Let's shut down Israel, and we'll have at least some peace and stability in that part of the world. We still have to deal with Pakistan and India, those yo-yos, and of course the Soviet Union, Russia. And you know what? I've been to Russia. I've been to China. I've been most places in the world. And we went to St. Petersburg for my birthday, my 115th birthday. And the people were wonderful. I think the mindset of St. Petersburg, they're kind of like as New York is to the Deep South. You know, they don't have that. You know, they're very cultured city. They're very sophisticated. I didn't want to go to Moscow. I didn't go to Moscow. I didn't go to any other Russian city. The only Russian city I've been into is St. Petersburg, and that's by choice. Because I could easily have gone to other parts of Russia. I just didn't have any desire to. But I loved St. Petersburg. I'd always wanted to see it. I wanted to see that palace up there, in St. Catherine's Palace in St. Petersburg. The other one's outside of St. Petersburg, Tsar Nicholas, I think it was. And it's like and I wanted to go there for snow on my birthday, and we got there the day before my birthday, and it was not snowing. I woke up on my birthday, and the ground was covered with snow. It was beautiful. It's just beautiful, and I just loved it. So that's St. Petersburg. Yeah. Wonderful. The Russian people, at least those Russian people, were wonderful people, and I'm sure the people throughout Russia are wonderful as well. So most people are good people, no matter where they are. But this government they have over there, and they've had that kind of government for some reason over and over again in Russia. I think it's because of the Viking blood. I don't know, because they got Viking blood and throughout Scandinavia, and they're not bad people. Who knows? I mean, they don't have bad governments. They don't have aggressive governments the way the Russians do. They just can't stop doing it. But we've got to stop. Trump has to stop saying that Putin is his friend. Putin is nobody's friend any more than Trump is anybody's friend. So, I don't know how I got up on that. I'm worse than Bill Maher switching subjects in the middle of a subject. But forgive me, I'm aging and not well. Some people might say. Who cares what they say? And who are they anyway? And who are you? And why are you watching this show? It's Mother's Day. Go do something with your mother, or your wife, or your daughter, or your dog. But don't waste your time watching this show, because all I do is rant and rave. Bye.